Today we're on the doors. This door is the passenger door, the right side. This door is actually in pretty decent shape. As you can see, it's pretty solid all through here. Here's where the rod is, right here, up in here. And you can see that it's cracked here and here, stress cracked. This has got a little dent there. All in all, this is a pretty decent door. This door I purchased from someone. The other door, I'll show you my original door that came with the truck. So this is the original passenger door that came with the truck. See, it's got the regulator and stuff in it. The glass is all broken. The regulator does seem to kind of work. I can get the window to move up and down just a little bit. But you come down here and it's completely rotted out here, all along in here. And this is actually separated from, you see, where this piece and this piece are separated. And then comes up around here. You can see it's not stress cracked here, which is good, but this is all rotted through here. Savable door. That seems to be really the only problem, other than it does have some like heavier rust on it that can be taken off. But that seems to be the real bad part about this door, is just this bottom end. Very savable, but since the other one is in better shape, I'm obviously going to go with that one. Now this one's the driver's door that I purchased with the other purchase door I had. I purchased a pair. As you can see here, this is a little more rotted here, more rotted up through here. There's some rot down in here. Overall, this is in pretty good shape along here. The drawback to this one is that the hinge was cobbled onto this door, and some extra plating and stuff has been all welded in. So this hinge isn't any good. I suppose somebody could actually weld a piece on there and make it work and stuff, but we'll see what I'm going to do. I'm not sure yet. So that's what this is, and I'll show you kind of underneath. And that's kind of the damage they did to it. It's all crappy here. So this is going to need sheet metal work on the door side, and it's going to need all this reinforcement work here. All in all, not a terrible door. It'd be nice if I had something a little nicer to work with, but that usually isn't the case with the stuff I have, because this truck did not come with a driver's door. Apparently it was stolen off of it or something, I don't know. But when I first got the truck, went down to a salvage yard in Georgia and actually picked up this door. So this door is a driver's door, but this door was the only thing I could find. So I did pick it up just in case. At least I have something to work with. See, now this, as you can see, is all rotted off down here. It is all rotted off on the bottom. There is no bottom there. It's just gone. So I would have to rebuild all of that. All in all, this is a really bad door. Can it be fixed? Sure, it can be. It depends on how much time and effort you want to put in it. But my thought would be scavenge that hinge for this other door and repair all this and repair this, and this would be a good solid door then. So that's where I'm at right now. So I did some repairs on the passenger side door. I put a little patch in here. I rebuilt this curve here like this. There's also a big support in there that the hinges that get riveted to go all the way up, and it actually came down around. That was rotted, so I actually put a heavy, real thick square bar in there, and I bent it around and welded it all in down here. And then I welded this stuff in. Now it's not finished. I still got to do some welding, but what I wanted to do before I went too far was make sure that it fit the door. You know, made sure it fit the door opening here. And so far I'm struggling a little bit. There's some movement in here, of course, for a hinge. And then up top, same one, and I only have one bolt in each. When I was first trying to shut it, this part here was hitting here. And so was this part here was hitting here. So I took this hinge and I moved it out. Because after I looked at it, after I was kind of closing, I could see that the door was going to be in from the body. So I moved that out, and then there's that. So what I'm having a problem with now is, as you can see, it's coming past there, okay, but now I'm hitting here. I'm hitting right up there. So the door is obviously crooked this way. And here are the hinges. You can see the gap. It's quite a bit more up here than down here. This gap here is more acceptable. This is way off. The problem is when for adjusting it this way, there really isn't much of an adjustment other than trying to bend that hinge that I know of. The hinge pin is in there. You know, there could be some play in that, but there isn't. So I'm going to keep pedaling at this because, see, here the hinge is riveted here, so you can't move it here, and the hinge is flat up against the stopper. I mean, this just gets sandwiched in here is all it is. So the only adjustments you have are this way, not this way. So it'll probably be bending a hinge is what I'm thinking, but I'll continue on and see where I end up. So I made some adjustments to the door, and I had to bend the hinges, and I got the door to shut. The unfortunate thing is this door doesn't fit the opening right. You can see that down here, this area here, that gap is like really, really tight. And it goes up to here. This is about 1/4 inch up here. Then if you look around here, I think that's a little wide there. It's touching here. This gap isn't too bad, but it does get a little tighter here. It's tight here, and it goes down like that. Now the bottom isn't too bad. I can always add material and stuff, but my whole deal here now also is that the body line isn't quite lined up. So the door really needs to go up a little bit more on this end, but it's right on the money right there. So if I were to push this door up more, that would make this tighter. See my dilemma? So is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put the other door on. I'm going to put the door on that came on the truck. I'm going to look at it, get a really good idea on the gapping here. What I want to make sure is that this window area isn't tweaked one way or the other. So I want to look at that. And like I say, you know, this whole thing has to kind of be up just a little bit, but I can't because right there. So if this opening is not right and I could pull this down, which would push this over, that might help me out. But I gotta see what's going on. But in order to adjust these doors, depending on how you want to make these hinges move, you might clamp this and open the door, and that will move this hinge this way, which will pull the door forward. Same with this one. If you want to pull the door backward, you would come in here and stick a block in here and shut the door. And so when you shut the door, you're going to start bending that hinge, in turn bending it this way and moving the door back. That's how you adjust these doors. So I'm still not sure about this door, but anyway, I'm going to move on and we'll keep on working at it. So here's the original door that came with the truck. And as you can see, the gap is okay. This is always going to be big, and there's actually a gap here coming down, and there's a gap through here. Now the problem is it's here. The door needs to be moved up on the side, which is going to bend that hinge to push the bottom this way, which is going to tighten the gap here, loosen the gap here, and loosen the gap here, and tighten the gap there, just like my other door. So I don't think the other door is tweaked. I just think that the door and the opening needs to be modified to make it work the way I want it to fit. So I just wanted to kind of give an update on that. I didn't rebend any of these hinges or anything. I just left them just like they were. I knew this door shut when I had the truck. I never paid attention to the body line because I just wanted it to shut at the time. So you can see the gap down here is actually pretty much the same. It's hard to see, but it's pretty much the same straight across. So it looks like I'm going to get into some metal work to make the door fit the way I want it to fit. It's got to be right. So these probably weren't exactly right from the factory. I would assume they're better than that, but you know, they would have bent, tweaked, whatever, but that's the way it is. So I'm going to go back to the other door. So I put the purchase door back on, and this is what I did. I know it was hitting down here on the body. If you remember a previous video, I didn't finish any of this out because I was concerned with where the door was going to be. I just wanted to make sure the gapping was right. And sure enough, this was hitting. It was all hitting in here. It was also hitting on this, because what happened was, see, the framing inside here is rusted, and what happened is it puckers up. When it puckered up, there wasn't enough room and was dragging on the lower part of this door here. So I just said, forget it. I just cut it out to be, you could pound on it all day long. It's still gonna have that bumpiness to it. So I just cut it out. Now I can grind this, finish this out nice. I can put a thin piece of metal on there again, and I can do the same with down here. That's what I've done here. So by doing that, I can now pull the door closed and see the body line is getting closer. It's not perfect yet, but it's close. But see the gap really tight down there and wider up here. And again, pretty much hitting here. So the opening and the door still don't match. But what I'm also noticing is, see, when I shut the door, it doesn't want to stay shut. It'll swing open, which you can't have that. There's stress someplace. And I believe that to be in this hinge here. If I move the door, you can see it spread just a little bit. So I'm going to clamp the door shut, and I'm going to heat this up real good to relieve the stress here. The other thing I noticed is when I close the door, it's tighter down here, not the gap. I mean, the door shuts solid down here, and still up here has a little play to go in and out. So that tells me that the door needs to be tweaked this way just a little bit. In order to do that, you take a block of wood and you stick it here in the jamb against that door, and you shut it, and then you push on this part of the door to then tweak that door this way. I know I'm going kind of through a lot here. Normally it's not really supposed to be a how-to, but I'm kind of also explaining the issues that I'm having with this door, which was the better door and everything. I can only imagine the problems I'm going to have with the driver's door. So anyway, these are all the things that you got to do to make a door like this fit on a hinge style like this, because you just don't have the adjustability as you do with, say, a muscle car or an internal hinge car. So anyway, again, I just wanted to kind of show you what I have to do. So I'm continuing on the door. Again, I'm probably going a little more detail than some people really want, but I got the door, so it just shuts. It's still, there's a rub someplace. I got it, so it is better here. It's just touching now. I took the filler out of there. There wasn't much in, but you can still see it's still touching right there. That's metal. And then see how tight this gap is? Now how tight this gap is here. Widens out, but it looks like it's crooked. It widens out a little bit down there. But this gap, again, wide, touching. I cut this piece out, like I had mentioned before, and I sanded that out. It's now down to metal. So what do you do? So here's what I'm gonna do. This door is gonna fit on this truck, period. The way to do that is I feel that this gap might be just a little tight. Obviously, this gap is too big. So now I gotta move the whole door back. I'm getting close to the body line. It's not perfect yet, but it's close. So by moving the door back and tweaking it just a hair this way, I'll get that to line up perfect. Now, in order to do that, I can't do it because the gap's touching right there. So what I'm gonna do, there's two things you can do. You can cut the door, grind this off to the side, how you need it, and then re-weld that edge, because this is a crimped piece of metal, or a rolled over piece of metal. So if you grind that down, you're gonna actually just see the ends of two pieces of metal. So you're gonna have to you're gonna have to weld that back up, and that'll change that. Don't want to do that. I want to keep this here. Not sure how the door seals go, and I'm going to probably do seals different than the original because I want this door to really seal good. Or you cut this off on the cab. Now, as what you see here, I took this gap right here, measured that gap. It's about 1/4 inch. You see there's a hole back there. That's where the pad goes to hold the door. So I don't want to see that. So the door has to be moved out this way. So then I took and you can start seeing a really light scribe here. I scribed that all the way down. That's how wide this is. So now I'm going to take my cutoff wheel and I'm going to cut on this side of that line. And I'm going to take that piece of metal and I'm either going to bend it back out or I'm going to get rid of it because I'll have to make a new one. So either way I do it, that's what's got to be done to make this door go back. So this might be the harder way to do it than just trim off the door, but I'm going to cut it off the cab. I want to keep this flange. I want to keep this flange the way it is. Although if I cut off this much of it, you know, it's not going to be that major of a deal, but I want this door to look right here where I can cut this off. I can remold this. You'll never know that that's been touched. That's what I'm going to do. So the next time you see it, I'm going to cut that thing off. And then is what I'm going to do is then I'm going to take both these hinges, bend them both that way to kick that door this way, which you can take and you put a block in between both sides, shut the door, and it pushes it all this way. And by doing that, this should stay the same if I do it evenly. And then I can take a little bit on the bottom hinge, do a little bit more, and that should take care of that. And it also should start giving me gap here. Any extra gap that I have, specifically inside here, if this gets too big, I'll take a piece of rod and add to it. You'll never know the difference. It'll look better wider than it would narrower. You know what I mean? So if I cut this, this wouldn't look as good. If I added a little bit to it, it would look normal. If that makes any sense. You'll know if that's too small. So that's what I'm doing. I know I'm long-winded on this one. There's a lot of tweaking and work to do. So let's see what I can do. Okay, this is stage one. I cut it. Now the gap is pretty even all the way up, although, you know, it's darker in here just because of the way I had this, I had to grind it. I actually cut along on the inside of that line all the way up. And over here, I didn't cut it. I just ground it a little. You can see that the metal is getting really thin right there. Yeah, it's all right. I'll touch that with some weld to build that up, and then I'll grind it back down. And then all along here, because that line went off, so right through here, I started splitting the metal almost with my cutter. So I stopped, ground that just a little right through there, and then that's the way it is. Now, this part that rounded that came out, I just pounded it in to hold this out a little bit, because this actually now needs to be pulled out a little bit when I weld it. So, and it doesn't matter if this is exactly over and straight up, or if it's angled like that. Right now it's almost like a 45. It kind of comes over and it's a 45. That's okay too. But I will. If you want it that way, I'm going to change it. I'm going to make this more of the 90 to match this. That's all. So my jamb looks the same. But when you shut the door, there it is. I mean, you can kind of see, better like this, I guess, kind of see the gap, right? Now is what I'm going to do, is I'm going to bend those hinges to pull the whole door back. All right, that'll be the next phase. So here's what happened, and here's what I did, and here's what I gotta, I guess, fix. So the door is on there. You can see that body line is lined up about perfect. What I did exactly what I said I was gonna do. I cut this. I actually cut the inside of this too, up here, so I could push this in just a little bit more. I made sure this was all good. I put a piece of wood, this here thin piece of wood, on the hinges so I could pull the door this way. That's exactly what I did. Here, you can see I've got some gap here now on this side. Then when I did this bottom hinge to get this right, it pulled this back out and it tightened this up. Now it's not hitting, but it's tight. And then is what it did was gave me a big gap down here. And it gave me a big gap, kind of see it down through here. This is a little big there. So for this whole thing to work, I'm going to have to do some more cutting. You can see that, that gap's just too big. The gap down here is a lot better. It gets tight again. It's tight again down here, so I'm going to have to widen that up a little bit. This is all good, but this is way too big. So I can't manipulate this door anymore to get this gap good, and keep this gap right and that gap right. It's almost like it's out of square, but I don't think it is. I mean, I had the same problem with the other door, and I measured this door comparing it to the original door, and all the measurements are the same. So I like where this body line is now. That is my go-to spot. I got to make everything else work around it. It's obviously really good right here too, and up here. This, I'll probably trim this out a little bit. And I was saying that I didn't want to trim this one out, but you'll see that one. This one you won't see. I can grind this down just a little bit and smooth it in, and you won't really see that. This one you see. So I didn't want to make that crooked and stuff. When it comes to here now, I've got to build the body closer to the door, and I'm going to take this and I'm going to move the body out just a little bit there. That should give me adequate gapping. And then I'm going to take see, this almost looks like it curves in here. So I'm going to take probably a little rod, weld it right on there on both ends to fill this gap up right. And that'll hopefully straighten that out looking. And then I'm going to do the same thing to underneath, because I noticed that with this door shut, this is quite a gap right here. I mean, I can get my finger in there, where down here you can't, so it's like the door is crooked, but it can't be, because the body line's got to be right. If I didn't care about the body line, I might be able to finagle a little bit better, but I'm not going to cut the door to move the body line. I'm going to cut the frame to fit the door. Follow me? So I know this is, again, a long-winded thing, but I just kind of wanting to show people the trials and tribulations of really making something like this fit. And as I continue on to the door, I've made some strides forward, so I wanted to kind of show what I've done so far. There's still a lot to do on the door. But first off, I wanted to show this part here. Now I've got a nice gap through there. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. It's a little tight right here yet, and it's still a little tight here. So I don't know if what I'm going to do exactly just right through here. I might continue repairing it, but let me show you what I've done. So I actually put a piece of tape on the arc that I wanted this to be. Then I ground it down, and that showed the two halves of the metal, because this is bent over metal. So it showed the two halves. And so then is what I did is I just welded it. And as you can see, there's still little, little spots from the weld, but welded it all. Then I put the piece of tape back on it and ground it. And then that gives you the arc that I'm looking for. This piece here can be worked a little bit more. There was a lot of lead in here. There was like lead bulbed out right through here. There still might be some more in there that I can still kind of get rid of. But anyway, that's the good start of that. The next thing I did was this gap right here. And the gap, as you can see now, goes all the way down, and it's pretty even. It's not exactly perfect. There's this spot right here is just a hair wider than the rest. Everything else is about 3/16 of an inch. This is just a hair over. And in the metalwork phase, if you can get it exactly 3/16 all the way around, you're a master. Usually it's hard to get that all the way around the door gap, period. But let me show you what I had to do that. I ran a piece of tape down. Actually, first I scribed it. I cut along that scribe. Then I actually peeled out the original piece like this up here. I would have cut it here, and I ground all this out, and I pulled that all off. So then all there was just the body here and this inner piece here. So then I made this part here, bent it, and then I ground this part back again, a little bit more of the thickness of that material. And then I stuck this material in there, ground it down, welded it in. And I welded it in here. As you can see, I can still do some more welding on that. And then this piece here, I'm going to make this piece, and it's probably going to wrap around the edge here, because this is kind of a little crappy in here. But I'll wrap around that, and then that'll finish all this. This part right here has to be, there's a hole that goes here. There's a little bumper that goes there. So anyway, all in all, this is the jam that I made. And again, why I did it is to get the right gap, because the idea was that I was not getting the right gap by maintaining this body line here. You can see I welded this up too. I ground it first, and then I welded it to give me a better gap. That's all I did. Now, what I have to continue doing is the gap up here seems to be just a little wide. Not sure exactly how I'm going to handle it. What I don't like about this gap up here is this hole. That's for one of those little bumpers too. I don't like that it's so far out this way. I'd like it to go in this way. So this whole thing, I might add into a little bit because I don't like the idea of seeing it through this gap, you know. So that's something I'm going to be working on. I'm then also going to be working on this lower part here. You can see that the door needs some repair here, and this gap is too big. Now, not only is that gap too big, it's a little big here, and it kind of gets wiggly up here. So I'm going to probably add material through here. Then I'm going to do the same thing to underneath here, because it's really wide down here. I want that to be tightened up to here, so I want this to come in another 1/4 inch or so. I want this to come down, you know, closer to this, but probably still a little tighter. But it's a little crooked because the way this door had to go, like I explained it all before, it kind of had to go like this to get the body line right. Otherwise the body line was too low. The door would have fit a lot better, but the body line would have never matched up. So that's what I'm doing. I'm continuing on this lengthy project. Moving on to the bottom gap. I welded in a little piece of metal here. You can kind of see that, how big that is. It's bigger than it needs to be. It's not welded all the way yet, just tacked. See, all along here, this added on piece. So now I kind of ground it down a little bit just so the door will shut. See how tight that gap is there? You know, it's a little bit better. Well, it's not even better there. I guess it's optical illusion. But anyways, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a piece of tape from here all the way down here at the gap size I want, and then I'm going to grind this up to it. And this down here is probably going to be a couple hundred thousandths, but up here is only going to be about, you know, 50. So that's how crooked the door is, but that's what I'm attempting now. So now that I welded that on the bottom, I taped a line to where I wanted my gap to be, and then I ground the metal up to the line. So now if you can kind of see the gap there, a lot nicer. So if I pull this tape off here, I can get it off. You can see where I've added material. I added this much material over here and very little bit over here. So, but you can see that now this gap is kind of where I need it. Now, in the bodywork stage, I can always make that gap even more now. Because now that I got it nice and straight, I can always tape onto it and make that gap bigger if I wanted to. But right now it's pretty good. I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to continue welding this on, and then I'm going to fix this gap doing the same thing, and this gap. And then I'm going to go ahead and fix that. So I finished up welding this piece down here. You can kind of see there's the better better gap down here now all the way. And then I added pieces here to give this a better gap. This is a better gap here. There's a dent actually right here, so I'm gonna have to work with that. But you can see it kind of gets a little tight here, but there's a little fill right here in the jamb because of this piece. So I'll just take the fill out there. And I patched these holes here. That's ready to go. The body does get the door does get a little tighter up here. I might just trim that back, weld it like I did up in the corner there. So I'm not gonna put all that stuff on this video. You already kind of got the gist of it. So that's what I'm gonna be doing there. But everything else, it's turning out pretty good. I mean, it's a big, long fix, I guess. You can see that gap looks nice now too. Some of it's kind of hard to see with the shiny, I guess. But anyway, that was a longer video than what I had anticipated. So I'm gonna cut it off here, but kind of get the idea how I'm gapping this whole door. I will be working on this top part too, eventually. But for today in this video, I think that's gonna be it. The gaps are pretty good, and they'll get better as I go.